Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this video lesson on basic economic concepts. This is Chapter 2, Part 1. I am Ms. Jennifer Blank, and I will be your guide on this journey. So we're going to talk about several different things throughout Chapter 2. We're going to do this in 4 parts. All right, Part 1, we're going to talk about the central questions of economics. We're going to look at economic systems, factor payments and profits, economic values versus goals, and traditional economies. So we got a lot packed into this Part 1. Part 2, we're going to explore the free market economy, incentives, markets, and the circular flow model. And then Part 3, we're going to discuss centrally planned economies and socialism and communism. Now, we're actually going to understand what those things are. As you've undoubtedly noticed, people run around saying, so-and-so's a socialist, so-and-so's a communist. Most of those people don't even know the definitions of those concepts. So we are actually going to know and understand them. And in Part 4, we're going to talk about mixed economies, of which the United States is one of them. The United States is a mixed economy. We are not a pure free market, contrary to popular belief. And like I said, in this section or in this video lesson, we're going to talk about those following things. So without further ado, here we go. So some focus questions to think about. How does society decide who gets what goods and services? This is the key question that we're going to be exploring throughout all of Chapter 2. How do we figure out who gets what? And then we're going to answer some three central economic questions. What goals and values affect how a society answers those key economic questions? We're going to look at the free market. What are the characteristics of a free market economy? What are the characteristics of a centrally planned economy? And then what are the characteristics of a mixed economy? And all of these three items decide who gets what very differently. So we're going to explore all of these things throughout Chapter 2. So let's talk about the central questions in economics. Okay, what to produce? We have to determine the needs versus wants within our society. And each decision that we make involves an opportunity cost, which we learned about in Chapter 1. Then we need to decide how to produce it. Once we know what we're producing, how are we going to make it? We have to determine which and how much of the available factors of production to use. And we have to determine the process of production. We want to make it the most efficient that we can. And then, for whom do we produce? Who's going to consume all of these things that we make? This is largely determined by the values of a society. And over here on the right, you see this lovely little graphic here that I found online, which I thought was kind of cool. I kind of liked how it looked. But this breaks it down. All right, so what to produce? This is determined in a free enterprise system or in our system by consumers' preferences. How to produce? This is determined by the producers that want profits. And for whom to produce? That depends on purchasing power. Okay, so that's another way for you to think about these central ideas. So what is an economic system exactly? Well, it's a structure of methods and principles that a society uses to produce and distribute goods and services. That is my dog Lola in the background. Yay, toy poodles, they're very loud. So who has an economic system? Everyone has an economic system. You have to have an economic system, otherwise a society cannot function. Okay, we have to make a decision, several decisions in fact, about what to produce and for whom to produce it, and how we're going to produce it, right? We have to make decisions about these things because resources are scarce. So everybody has an economic system because everybody has to figure out the answers to these questions. So factor payments versus profits. Well, what the heck are these things anyway? Well, a factor payment is income that people receive in return for factors of production. So you go to work, you are part of labor, right? Or your parents go to work. Somebody you know, including yourself perhaps, goes to work. Well, the income that you get, your paycheck, that is a factor payment, okay? So in this sense, factors are land, labor, and capital. And then profits. What exactly are profits? Well, this is the amount of money a business receives in excess of its expenses. Okay, it's not the amount of money that they make total. This is the amount of money that they receive after they subtract all their expenses. This is what they clear. This is the net amount that they can then use to do other things. This goes to entrepreneurs or people who own and operate businesses. Societies have to make decisions about the worth of each of the factors. And these decisions are dictated by the values of a society. So I want you to really pay close attention to this concept that in every society we decide which factors are worth the most. Okay, and the economic systems we're going to talk about view the worth of each factor very, very differently because societies that have those types of systems have different values. So I really want you to pay attention to this concept. All right, so economic goals versus societal values. Economic goals are what a society wants to achieve. For example, economic growth is usually a pretty good goal. We like to grow. Growing is good, right? So that's a key goal. But then we have these values, what we believe, and we also believe in economic equality. So how do we square this? How do we make economic growth and economic equality kind of work together instead of working against each other? People in a society have to make decisions, and these are often contradictory. So we want economic equality, but very often the idea of economic equality is contradictory with regard to economic growth, okay? Those two values come into conflict with each other, all right? It's very important you need to think about this. So what are some general economic goals that we have? Well, there's efficiency, and that involves the right goods, the right quantity, right people, and right price. All right, all those rights are going to allow for efficiency to happen. We care about freedom, the opportunity to make economic choices without interference. We also want security. We want to know we can get what we need when we need it. Now, very often, freedom and security come into conflict. There's equity, who should get what. This is largely determined by values. And then there's growth, typically an increase in the standard of living, and innovation is necessary for growth to occur. Again, equity and growth tend to come into conflict. Also, equity and efficiency. So just to really highlight these ideas, these are very, very important. You should write all these down and memorize these 5 key economic goals. They're very, very important. So economic values, it varies by society. Some examples are environmental protection, job security, social safety nets. But economic values, like I said, often conflict with economic goals. Traditional economies work in this way. It's an economic system that relies on habit, custom, or ritual to decide the 3 key economic questions. It usually centers around the family unit, and work is generally divided along gender norms. This is what we were in like caveman days, and native peoples tend to operate within traditional economic structures. Some key characteristics: they're small and close-knit. They provide for the entire community, not just the immediate family. There are few mechanisms to deal with outside forces, so trade is not really a factor here. There's a slow adaptation of new ideas and technology. There's a limited range of goods, and generally a low standard of living. All right, that is the end of part 1. I hope you learned what you needed to, and I will see you in part 2.